Hey, what's up everyone? In this video, we're going to upgrade our Payload CMS project from 3.65 all the way up to the most recent, as of this recording, of 3.72. So there's been a lot of updates since the beginning of... There's been a lot of updates from 3.65 all the way up to where we're going now. There's a big chunky one at 3.71 that we'll probably be able to get most of the way through. But I'm excited to dive in and figure out what changes Payload CMS made and how you can use those in your projects. So we're going to look at all these changes that Payload made and apply them to just an example project that I already have from the last time I streamed this upgrade guide. So we're going to take a look, but don't have much to add here in the beginning because we're just going to dive in and start working on this project. Oh, excuse me. I do have... Move that. I do have a few... How do I want to say... Really, it's a project that I used last time that I did this. So it's an example. I believe it's just a blank template that I created. So there should be the link to the old upgrade guide in the video, but I don't know if there, or the repo, but I'm not sure if there is. So I'm going to add that to the description really quickly because it would be helpful if you all also had the repo that we're going to be working out of. Because yes, it is going to be the same. I don't see it here. I'm checking one more video. I'll be shocked if I didn't actually link the repo. There it is. That's not the one I want. Repo, upgrade. Okay, well, it's on my website, so I will link the repo to my website. So 1 second, because this will take but 1 second. That next video. Love when I have everything organized. Okay, so I'm going into the live description for this video. So when you refresh here in just a second, you will have access to the old repo, but it may have you sign up on my website if you're not already signed up. So, all right, that's that. There will be a repo at the end of this with all of the changes that we're making as well, but that's enough chatter. Let's do some code. So again, as I normally do, I've got my browser on the left side, which has localhost, which is not running right now, and then the releases. And then on the right side, I have all my code. And I'm going to upgrade this payload up to 3.72.0. And so I'm going to need to do that for all of these. The better way to do this would be to do create payload app. That's awesome. I've not updated any of my projects to 3.72 yet, so I'm hoping that this is smooth. And I'm really excited to get up to 3.71 because I do know that there's a ton of changes there. So what I can do is I'm running p-npx create payload app, and it's going to check if payload exists in my app already. And what it's going to do is upgrade payload instead of re-downloading it. Now I don't have to go through each of the packages here. They're all just updating for me. Now here I did delete my node modules and a few other things to save space. So I'm going to want to do pnpmi to install everything else. And you'll notice that our next version is wrong. It's very low. So this is back before the vulnerability. So we're going to upgrade this to an unaffected version as we go, because as of version 3.66, there are now minimum versions of Next and React. So if I run npm dev and refresh, secret key, that's not what I was expecting. I wonder if what is this? Here, let's just set this. No. All right, so I'm going to create a new environment variable. I don't know where I had this project set up. Hold on. I've implemented my own import strategy because Payload don't have their finish. Yeah, so I know the import export is in beta, and they just added import. They just added import functionality to the plugin in one of the more recent versions. But again, I know it's pretty early days for that since it is still in beta. So I'm gonna go to my Payload upgrade guide. I guess I don't have an environment here. Or I opened the wrong project. I may have opened the wrong project. We'll see here in a second. So I'm gonna copy this. Where is this project going? Nope, this is the right one. Okay. Okay, well, I don't know if I had anything in here, but regardless, this is running now. And it will run even though I have an older version of Next running as well. All right, very secure password and secret. My guess is that my login is this. It is indeed. All right, so now let's do Payload. Since I haven't worked on this project in a while, there's just a bunch of stuff that I didn't have done. So I'm just generating import map and types, and then restarting the dev server. Perfect. Okay, so still some errors that will work out here in a second. Oh, this is an example. There we go. Cool. Oops. I wonder why this is still saying that I need to generate my import map, but that's okay, because that's not what we're working on right now. We're not trying to troubleshoot this project. Let's look at our releases. So for 3.66, as I mentioned, the new minimum version is Next 15.4.8. This increases later on. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this up to 0.10, which is an unaffected version. And then here, React DOM, we're going to do React 9.2. I believe it's 2, and do the same up there. So now we can do pnpmi. And we should be up and secure and ready to move forward. So this was not a security issue with Payload, so I think it's important to say that. This was a security issue with next.js. So Payload only imports Next as a peer dependency, so this is not something that impacted Payload projects outside of impacting them as next.js projects. So nothing too severe for Payload and its team. All right, we did all this. Support custom slugify functions. So we put a slug field somewhere in here. And now what we can do is in the slug field, you'll see two things actually. So the first, which may come later, field to use is being deprecated in favor of slug, or use as slug, so we can use that as text. And then as you saw, there's a slugify, which you can use a function. So this is going to be helpful for people who need to use different slugify functions for languages that are not English or that use standard English characters. So anything that, like French or Spanish, that have, or German, that have other characters that are not present in the English alphabet, typically get messed up a little bit in the default slugify function. So here you can actually use your own. And so you define this by including the value to slugify, and then you can use any function that you would like. Like the example here, if you import slugify from slugify, and we can install slugify, you can then use that function. Let me close this here. So we can do slugify and then value to slugify, and then you can add additional options there as well. So this does add a dependency, but if you don't mind that, then you're able to use this slugify function, or of course you can import your own. So I've got an error here, and that's because I lost my parentheses, I believe. It's really hard to see without this wrapping, so let me wrap this. Oh, it's just this, I think. There we go. So now we have a value to slugify, and these options are going to be available from slugify itself. And so that is its own dependency there. You can look into the documentation if you want to use this as your slugify function. So after that, there's accessibility testing and improvements. This is not something that we can actually go in and look, but now there's testing for the infrastructure of Payload projects to automatically do accessibility scans. So that means that anytime that somebody else Anyway, so anytime that somebody comes up with anybody who needs accessibility features are automatically added to the accessibility testing. So, something worth streaming. Wouldn't consider this is, I think, like 6 updates minor, but yes, people watch this, they enjoy it, they like it. So I'm going to keep going. Support external JSON schema, file references in type generation. So here you can set your own JSON schema and set a reference to your own JSON file. This is not something that I will demonstrate because it's not something that I'm going to use in my projects, but that is just done in your Payload TypeScript schema. So you can just add the schema option, and I'm not going to just copy this example, but let's see what this is used for. Okay, so this is really just a correction of something that was not being passed. So the working directory is now a standard parameter in JSON schema to TypeScript. So Perfect. So you can use external schema file references for your TypeScript file. Perfect. So now if you're using the all right, if you're using the Cloudflare D1 adapter, it auto detects the template for you to use, because if you're using the D1 adapter, only Cloudflare is going to be used for that. So I can demonstrate that. Let's use my terminal. So if I change my directory, and I'm not going to go into, because I'm not going to keep this, but if I go to my tutorial repos, I can pnpx create payload app, and then D1 test. And then if I select with Cloudflare D1, it'll automatically select the D1 template, or sorry, not the D1 template, the D1 database for me. So don't need to do that though, because I don't want to do this right now. But that is something that I will be revisiting here shortly. Perfect. Now, add alignment support to upload nodes. So this was an issue where you weren't able to choose how images showed up in your content using the rich text field. So now you can left, center, and right justify your image or upload elements as well. So I don't believe this is something that you need to opt into, but let's take a look. Nope, nothing you need to opt into, so you're just able to start using this today as part of your, well, today as in, what is that, December 3rd. So there we go. Remove all from js.comment. Just looking through the bug fixes real quick, and I'll call out anything that's important here. Next versions we talked about. Import export. So we'll talk about the import export here in a little bit. Multi-tenant. Pasting single block. All right, perfect. So I don't see anything here that's really worth calling out for 3.66. So let's move up to 3.67. So now there's a group by support for query presets. If we click into that, or we can actually demonstrate this. So if we go to our oh, okay. So this isn't something that I can demonstrate in this project. So when you are setting your group by, so when you are using your query presets, they now save and store your group by state. So now if you have, for example, a preset to pull out all of your draft documents, but you currently have a group by title, not title, a group by category, your group by category will remain, and your new query preset will take that state across different presets. So now you don't have to keep redoing a bunch of different presets just to get your group by in there. It's done for you automatically. For e-commerce, which I really need to get into, you now have guest carts. So this was a breaking change, I believe. Yep, breaking change for e-commerce. This was back December 5th. So ideally by now that has been worked out. But now you're able to allow guest carts, which is enabled by default, and a couple of extra hooks were added as well. To the upload admin type, there are now before and after input properties. Those were missing before, so you're able to add to the upload field a before input and an after input. So they were supported before, but they led to type errors. That has been fixed. After operation and before operation hook calls 2, I remember this being added to something specific. Oh, okay, so a few things were missing. The unlock find versions and find versions by ID were all missing, and so now they've been added as well. Looks like there were some AI tools added here. Breaking change for e-commerce. We already talked about that. And that's it for 3.67. So some of these are pretty minor and pretty easy to just fly through. Like this one, support TurboPack build on Next.js canaries. So version 3.68 is the first step really of getting Payload fully supported by Next.js 16. There's still going to be some issues. From what I can tell, the main issue right now is still cache components. Like, I don't think the admin dashboard is going to work for that. So that is, from what I understand, on the roadmap. I have no internal insight beyond what I've seen online and in Discord, but I know Next.js 16 support is actively in the works. So add, read, and read distinct to hook mapping. Pass through collation config. All right, cool. So I don't see anything else in the documents that are worth pointing out. Moving on, trying to go back to page 1. GitHub is not great at UI there. All right, so all the way down to the bottom, we've got a couple of patches now. So this is, again, where things just started compounding. So 3.68.1, there was the build errors were suggesting vulnerable Next.js releases. So that was fixed in 3.68.1. There were some issues with a fix from a couple of versions before this, but in 3.68.2, there was a routing issue for the admin dashboard. So now that had been fixed, that I believe users got stuck in like an infinite loop. So that's been fixed. That's about it right there. Then there's 3.68.3. So again, all of these just came out so fast. Bump minimum version of Next to 15.4.9. The actual minimum version should actually be 15.4.10, which I upgraded at the beginning of this video. Okay, and then there's version 3.68.4. Previous value from hooks should be populated within. Looks cool. And now there it is. So here in 3.68.4, there is the enforcement of Next.js 15.4.10. So properly construct local request URL. Okay. So then 3.68.5, which I believe is the last of the 3.68s. Yes. 3.68.5, this was the fix to the infinite redirect, totally fixed now in 3.68.5. So rapid fire changes for Payload from 3.68 on. But then there was a big change, which this was one of my favorite changes that has been released recently, is Payload released modular dashboards using widgets. I have a video outlining how to use this from start to finish, so you can check out that video separately, but you are able to add your own modular dashboards using widgets, and it's all the same as like defining a custom component, but all of those custom components are then added here where it says dashboard at the top left. As soon as this loads, there we go. I can edit the dashboard, and I don't have anything added, but I can add like my collections again. And so I'm able to move this, this has to be full, but regardless, I'm able to add, I can even remove all widgets from my dashboard, but I'll leave that there, so discard those changes. So real easy to add your own widgets however you want to add them. So feel free to check out my video on how to set up modular dashboards. And now there's cursor rules and agents.md to templates to make using AI assistants easier with Payload. So there has been a lot of work of making AI development better and easier with Payload, and this is just another step forward for that. There's nothing groundbreaking in it, it just is best practices for Payload. Let's see. There, in the MCP plugin, collection and strategy has been added to the user. So the strategy being the auth strategy. And then, of course, the collection slug is the actual slug, I believe, of the user, it appears. So that was a simple bug fix to ensure that you have everything you need from the user fields for collection and for strategy to do whatever logic you need to do with that. In the S3 storage adapter, the file name is now encoded, so there was a problem where spaces or special characters would break URLs from the file generation for S3 storage URLs. That's since been fixed. So if you were using a CDN and there were like spaces in your file name, it might break the link. That's since been fixed. All right, so that's 3.69. 3.70, a couple more features. So you're able to use sort arrays in the REST API now. So this is similar to the local API where you can sort by a primary field, then a secondary field, and then so on. You can now do that with the REST API as well. And so that's what this looks like here. I don't use the REST API a whole lot. I do recognize that people do use the REST API for projects that are outside of next.js, for not necessarily for mono repos, because for most JavaScript frameworks, you can use the local API with a little bit of finagling. But for those who don't want to use the local API or can't use the SDK, REST API is always a good option. So you can now use these, you can now use this QS ESM sort arrays. And so that just looks like this here, where you have the sort with the index of 0 and then whatever you want, and then the sort of index of 1 and then whatever you want there. So a few extra query parameters that you can use for your REST APIs to make your sorting more powerful. So now I need to plug in my computer because I forgot to do that. Give me 1 second. There we go. All right, so next up we have this documentation that's been added for rich text lexical. So this has been a hot discussion topic for lexical blocks in general, but I know how people feel about the Payload documentation. It's why I started my channel, was to help people figure out the Payload documentation. It's why I'm doing this video today, to help people with Payload documentation. But regardless, there is a new documentation page for the lexical rich text blocks. So I'm going to click on, well, that's a 404 because that was the old link. So if I open this, all of this is the blocks. None of this is new. It's just easier to read and more fully featured. So you are able to see how things work, why they work, and more configuration options. So I do need to update my blocks. Oh, wow, there's actually like complete examples too. So that's really good to see. But I do need to update my blocks video, and I do plan on doing that shortly. So these examples are very thorough, and hopefully they will help people to figure out how to use Payload lexical rich text blocks, because they are a very powerful way to use and design websites using Payload. So excited to see some progress done on the documentation, because it's been said for months that that is continually in the works, and it is getting better. So it's good to see a big, massive change like that one. I mean, enough to call out a new feature. Let's see. Before document controls. All right, there's a bug fix for TurboPack not working on 16.1.1 Canaries. That's been fixed. MCP SDK dependency has been pinned. Doesn't look like there's a whole lot else here. If you're using custom hooks on S3, you were affected by a breaking change here. So if you haven't updated to version 3.70 and do have custom hooks in your S3 storage adapter, you might want to address some of these changes that have happened before you make an update. Otherwise, your project will break. And the primary reason for that, I skipped this bug fix, but it's an important one. Files were being uploaded before validation in S3 adapters, so obviously you don't want that to happen, so that bug has since been fixed. But that does result in a breaking change. Good breaking change, but a breaking change no less. All right, here's a big one. Can I view all of this? No. So let's open this in a new tab. All right. Do you have any idea if there is a way to use Payload with convex? There is not like an official adapter for convex, but I'm wondering, it's all TypeScript. It should not be too difficult to do something similar. I say that as someone who has not made a database adapter before. But I imagine there's either a way to keep your data in sync between. So for an example, you can have just a standard local database and then use hooks to send data to convex. So I feel like I should look into this a little bit more. So let me make a note in my stream notes, and I'm going to move convex up because I've been hearing about this a little bit more than usual. So I'm going to spend some time exploring convex and hope I can get to the bottom of that, because I have not looked too deeply into convex other than that I know it's TypeScript and I know it's a real-time database. So all good things, all things that I think are necessary, just not something that I've looked at quite yet. So I will take a look at it. As of right now, there is no official way to use convex with Payload. So let's explore. I'm just making a note to myself. Okay. I am curious. I need to look more into convex. I know it's a pretty big deal right now. Of course. All right, let me take another sip here before I jump into 3.71, because this is a big one. Yes, please do. I kind of also want to see what it takes to use, like if there's a way to do a custom database adapter. But I don't think there can be, because I know database is required in the payload config. So the only way that you would be able to do it is to run two databases, your convex and then whatever else. But you know, SQLite could work there, where you just have a file-based database and use SQLite as just a catch-all. But then there's the question of what gets generated and how it gets generated, because SQLite is expecting a different shape than convex likely is, because I don't know. Convex I don't think is a I don't think convex is a relational database. It could be, I don't actually know, or if it's just something else entirely. So the questions are really, could you use SQLite? That way you just have a light file that is in your project to manage the requirement on payload, and then send all that data over to convex so it's stored there. And then is it worth the overhead is another question to figure out. So that's in lieu of having its own database adapter. But I think that's worth some exploration there. Okay, so it's kind of like how Prisma handles Postgres, where a schema is generated, but a schema is generated by Payload as well. So that step is already done. Of course, you have to have your database adapter. So definitely worth exploring. I'll take a look. Honestly, I want to start streaming a bit more so I can start exploring some of these things. It seems that more people have been enjoying I'm going to go to my face because we're just chatting now at this point, but a lot of people, not a lot, a few people have gone back and just watched my streams on replay while they're working. So I kind of want to be able to do this more and explore more products. I have a whole list of stream ideas that I want to do. Convex has been on there for months, and I just haven't been able to get to it because I've been doing other videos or other tutorials, or just trying to, stay ahead of the content schedule. So there's a lot going on, but I do think that these streams, first of all, the replays are important, and then the edited versions are something that people are looking for. So Convex is on the list. I want it to be up on the list faster, but right now streaming once a week plus all of the other things I want to do for the channel just keep eating up my time. That's neither here nor there. That's not your guys' problem. That's just me talking out my process and thinking out loud. But yeah, we can jump back into this and think more about other topics in a little bit. So here we've got a big one. So 3.71 is a pretty big update. It's pretty beefy. This is all features. And that doesn't even include all of the bug fixes, which is also a really long list. So let's start from the top here. There is concurrency that's been added to jobs. So this is something I actually need to add to one of my projects, because sometimes when you're generating jobs, you may do one incorrect by accident and then need a way to delete it. And so you can go into your collection and delete the job, or here we can say that newer jobs will delete older pending ones that did not complete and did not start processing. So that's the supersedes option, which is super helpful, and I do need to actually implement into a project. So newer jobs delete older pending jobs of the same concurrency key, which you set in the concurrency object in your jobs. So that would be in the actual task itself, I believe. Yep, concurrency, and then I could set a key, for example, and then we'll do exclusive, true, and then supersedes, true. And so the exclusive means that multiple jobs operating on the same resource won't conflict for those resources. So they cannot run in parallel if exclusive is set to true. They'll rather be set into a queue. I feel like I just lost my order here. So supersedes, exclusive. Okay, handler. All right, so within handlers, you can now send a job canceled error from within a task, and that will stop the job from retrying, even if you have like a number of retries set. So lots of good there. So instead of it trying to, you can set up logic that instead of a retry, you just stop the job from running and then move on to the next part. There is now a custom status component that I actually want to look at because there's no screenshot of this one, which I kind of expected. So let's set one up real quick. I have settings menu item index. Let's see what this is. Source components. All right, so that's a test item. We'll see what this ends up looking like. Because I'm going to go over to my collections, and we're going to go to page, and in our page, I'm going to set a components, and in that have edit status, and then set this to be, that's not what I want. Whoops. Set this up to be that there. And now I will generate types and import map and then go to my page edit screen. So back with jobs. Since it's not set to true by default, you need to add enable concurrency control if you would like to use it. So I can hit save there. All right, so now if we go to here, we can see for some reason, our import map isn't generating correctly. So let's do payload, generate import map. I wonder if it's because I added the schema here. So I'm going to delete, let me be more clear here. I'm going to delete the schema, which was added from an earlier update, and payload generate types. Okay, so it's just not running payload anything. So pnpm generate import map, generate types. So that explains a lot. So my payload command is not working correctly, but I can get around that by just using pnpm instead of payload. pnpm dev. Now if I refresh, so somewhere in the status, there should be this. Interesting. So I don't see anything if I go to page. Components, edit, status. This should be correct, but I'll still try. See what we get here. Interesting. So I don't see anything added to the status unless it's added here. Or perhaps we can see if I do versions, drafts, set that to true and see what happens. Those will go away. So I'm going to create a new page instead. There we go. All right. So the reason the status wasn't working is it wasn't available. So it appears that the status component is only available when used in tandem with versions. So I can change this to be whatever I want really to be, but change this to be status, for example, test item for status, that changes. So you can make this an icon. You could make this, so like if draft status is draft, you could do a draft icon, or if it's published, you could do some kind of published icon. Whatever you want to do, you're able to do it with this status component. So bulk operations, single transaction. So this helps you bypass issues with processing large documents in bulk. So this is typically a limitation of Document and Cosmos databases because of cursor limitations within those transactions. So if you're doing large bulk updates, you now have that ability in MongoDB. And it is something that you can opt into. Since I'm using Mongo, I can explore. In my database, I can use bulk operation single transaction, set it to true, and that's all you need to do. And that should get rid of anything with more than 100, like an error from anything with more than 100 documents of feature not supported. Really interesting that databases would have those kinds of limitations, but neither here nor there. All right, so there are now additional time zones, and you can use UTC offsets that are non-traditional, so custom, in other words, is what I'm really trying to say. If I go to my page, I've got my time zones here. And so instead of, well, UTC, well, let's just do something like value. We can do it's just an example. We'll do negative 830. And if I come here and use the label of New York and save that, we'll be able to see in our API if I publish the changes, a 2030, so that would be 830. Hold on. I didn't set a time. Oh, so it may just be a date thing. Hold on. Yeah, so the time just took whatever time it wanted. But then my time zone is set to be 8:30 instead. So that is something that you're able to adjust as you would like. But if I wanted to switch this back to Los Angeles, I can do that, and my time zone changes to be America, Los Angeles. Perfect. All right, there's also an override for the time zone field. All right, so if I go to my pages, date time zone shows up, and I'm kind of forced to see it in the columns. And what this is showing is that you don't have to have that. So if I go under supported time zones and do an override, I can do the same thing that they're doing. We're going to use the base field, for example, and then just pass in the base field so nothing changes. Do admin, and then disable list column. And we can set that to be true. I'm getting a big old type error. But does it work? It does work, so it's no longer there. But I wonder, so if I do, there's no admin within time zone, so that would also mean, let's figure out what this type error is. Oh, I just typed things in wrong, I think. Yes, of course I did. So then I can do admin. And base field. There we go. So type errors are gone. So I can also in the admin add a description. This is the time zone. And that should show up, I think. Possibly not, because it's not really a... Let's do something like is clearable and set that to be false. This is something a little bit more practical, but still not changeable, it seems. Yeah, so it's still clearable, but that's fine. Sortable is not going to work. Filter, disable. I wonder if I can just disable it. Set that to true. So there's not a whole lot, it seems, that we're able to set this to. Like read only, can't change that. Very interesting. But we can disable the list column. So let's take a look. The override. Base field, select field. Yep, so I wasn't able to get is clearable working. I could probably do... I just want to see if anything other than just this one thing is going to work. So I can do components, and let's do after input and set this here. Well, we can see. And yes, I realize there's a type error here as well. Yeah, so at least disable list column works. Oh, I wonder if some of this was just affecting... Yep, so there's a hidden date time zone field that shows up with it. So the problem was all of this was applying to not the select field here, but to the date time zone here. So like if I were to do that description again, it shows up there. So helpful stuff, but it only applies to the actual date time zone field that gets hidden by default. Strict draft types. Okay, so when you are querying drafts on your front end, sometimes you can run into issues with required fields. So now operations with draft set to true can be opted into having strict draft types, which correctly type required fields as optional when your querying based on draft is true. So this is going to be default in version 4, which, if you've noticed as we've been going, there's been a few more references here to version 4, so excited for what the team is planning there. Not that I've heard anything, but it does seem like version 4 is at least being defined of what version 4 can look like for Payload. But I'll set strict draft types to true. So now if I were to go query my front end for drafts, I would be able to get optional fields instead of getting type errors for draft documents. All right, there's now a collection or global to get better context when debugging in your validation errors. This is for Drizzle. This is for Drizzle only. So if you're using Mongo, you're not going to be seeing this as a new update. A quick question. I have an exam. The repository has both the starting project and finished result. Can I open both projects at the same time to compare the components added to the finished one? You can by comparing the diff in Git. So you should be able to open your IDE and check in Git. Oh. Love that. So for your project, yes, you could either just, like, if you wanted to put the completed project in GitHub and review your offline version on your computer and the online version on GitHub, you could look at the version diff in Git. So this is WebStorm, but anything, this is WebStorm, but anything with Git, you should be able to, like for example, I can go up to my file and check local history, and I can show history to compare the change compared to the 20th, whatever. So there's a couple of ways that you can look for it and figure that out, but Git is probably going to be the easiest way, where you can just, all of these are going to be from a mono repo, so that's not going to be helpful. But you should be able to use Git to find the finished components and compare them to the ones that you have on your local project. So either GitHub or locally. I don't think you can open the same project with WebStorm, so at least not that I can think of, unless you've got two computers with WebStorm in the project. I'm trying to think, I've done something similar. I'm trying to think of how I did it. No, I think I've just used GitHub because, like, I can try to open this project again. Let me move this. But I don't think this is going to work. You could duplicate the project. There are ways. But let's see if this works. Oh, yep, you can. So just open the project again and open it in a new window, which is a pop-up. So I have two screens up right now of the same project. So, but if I change my branch, it's going to change on the other one as well, I believe. So yeah, there's no branch control here. So I believe the branches are going to be different. So no, but yes. All right, good luck. So server-side cart logic. Is this a breaking change again? No, it's not. There's one for import export. All right, so again, like I said, 3.71 is a long one. All right, so there's now the cart logic's been added to the server. So you're now able to use new REST APIs and new hooks. So when you do on login, you can also merge guest carts with a user cart. This is really expected behavior. Like Amazon does this. I'm sure Shopify stores do this, no problem. I just did this yesterday buying some new software. I did my cart as a guest and then checked out as a user, and that just merged my account. On logout, as you expect, to clear sessions, as well as clear sessions, merging cart, and refreshing the cart. So that both gives you granular control and built-in functionality. Okay. This is just an example, but I really just need to get into the e-commerce plugin. Let me move that up on my list. It's getting a little bit more stable and mature, so it's something that I should definitely get into. But first, I actually want to do the import-export plugin. So there we go. We'll ignore this, refresh cart, so you can refresh the cart state. We talked about this. Just removing blockers. So now the import functionality has been added to the import-export function. It now lives up to its name. It is still in beta, so you should expect breaking changes if you are using the import-export plugin as the team develops it. Supporting disable. So by collection, you are able to you are able to disable and enable importing and exporting per collection and include custom collection overrides. So full example here. Again, this is something that I'm going to need to explore on a different video. So I've got this close to the top on the list as well, because this is also getting more mature and something that I will actually be able to make a video about. So excited to explore this one as well. You can now query draft documents using the MCP plugin, which I don't think I have installed here. Sounds like I need to start revisiting the MCP plugin again. This one is also still in beta, so a lot of these changes are in beta, but Payload betas are pretty polished. So if you are using any of these, there will be breaking changes. You can expect those, but they are likely pretty close to being, like the kinks are pretty close to being worked out. All right, so this is one, again, that I have not done a whole lot with. I don't even think this is on my list, nested docs. So let me add that to my list. Nested docs. And the main reason nested docs have not been on my list is primarily because I thought folders was going to handle a lot of what nested docs do. Nested docs does, the plugin does. It has not panned out that way, so I do think it's time for me to dive into that. But you're now able to use the rec parameter to generate a URL. So this includes things like the locale, you can get the payload object, you can get the user, things like that. And that's true for both the URL and the label. So you just have a little bit more flexibility there for your nested documents. You can skip the sync for plugin search. So you don't have to create a new search index based on locale, document properties, or other criteria. So with the request, again, that means you can get payload, you can get the collection slug. So if you have a whole collection that you don't want in the search index, you can just exclude those. Same with the locale, and the same with just the doc in general. Whew, needed to get more water. All right, so now there is automatic type inference for the SDK. So you no longer need to manually pass in the generated types. The SDK is going to do it for you. And with the SDK, there's now new errors being thrown on failed API requests. This was a big ask from the team. There was a lot of conversation about people needing proper error handling. Imagine that. So the team worked on that pretty quickly, got status, errors, response, and message properties added to the SDK, which makes it infinitely more usable. So again, that's on the list. I will get to it when I get to it. And then for redirects, Japanese translation has been added. Yes, has been added for the redirects plugin. So that's it for features for 3.71. We still have one more minor release to go over, but we still have a bunch of bug fixes to look through, so I'm going to do that right quick to see what we have. Oh, this is interesting. Full image URLs stored in database. I thought they were. Oh, okay. Right. Okay, so image URLs were being stored in the database when they were locally hosted, which, like, if you have localhost 3000 API image whatever, that's not going to translate well to when you go to production locally. So it's stored as a path now and is handled correctly. So many bug fixes. Some template fixes, translations. Okay. That was a lot, but I think we got it. All right, so that's 3.71. On to 3.72, which, oh wait, sorry. 3.71.1, because if that wasn't enough bug fixes, there's one more. There was a debug console log on the form component that's been removed. 2 assets. Great. Oh, right. Taking a quick look over here. So now 3.72, which I remember this one not being nearly as fully featured as 3.71. So this brings us to our last update for Payload, and that's version 3.72. And that adds the experimental option, experimental, so remember that means that breaking changes can come. There's an option for localize status and allows unpublished per locale functionality. So if I go to my build config, I'm here now, I'm going to add experimental, and I can say localize status and set that to true, and I do have localization, as you can see here, enabled. And we should be able to see what this looks like. So if I go to page, which I did just enable versions, and then in drafts, I can do localize status, set that to be true. And this appears to be just one of the many localization updates that Payload is making. So I can unpublish in English, or for example, Spanish. So if I unpublish this, and then French is not published, English. Interesting. So I can publish in English, and then it's not published in French or in Spanish. So again, this is experimental, so if you notice any bugs, which I think I just saw one where unpublishing in a different locale published something else, or unpublished for me everywhere, so let's publish there and then go to French. All right, so that all works. And then we do have the unpublish option. So unpublish is going to unpublish from all. So now Spanish and French, and then I can just publish in French, and that won't publish anywhere else. So, oh no, I have. It just didn't work at first. So it may have just refreshed. So I'm all the way up to 3.72. But yes, so that works great. We'll see how this continues to develop. This is actually really similar to, it's actually easier than how I've seen it done in Craft CMS. So Craft, for what it's worth, did actually have some good localization features. So can't be too mad about that. And this mimics that pretty closely and makes it easy to publish and unpublish documents in different locales as well. So I don't do a whole lot in localization, but I know that this is a big change for people who do use localization in their projects. And that brings us to our last feature. We'll still look through the bug fixes, but our last feature for this video, the depth parameter is now added to the MCP find resource tools. I'll stop real quick because one thing that I saw mentioned is that the MCP plugin can be a little bit token hungry if you're using, for example, Claude, but the same is true for Cursor. And that's because by default, these AI tools, the LLM assistants, they are pulling all of the tools all at once. So you can set where they only pull tools on demand instead of always, which means that you're able to manage your token usage a little bit more effectively. This is not what this part does, but I did see somebody say a while ago, maybe like a week or two ago, and talk about how they used Claude's, I forget what it's called, it's like a tool deferral or something like that, where they only download and call tools that they're going to use and not all of them. Which just is super helpful when trying to manage your resources. Back to this, you can now add a depth to your MCP resource tool. So you can either do it for ID only responses, which would be a depth of 0, which just returns a string or a number, which makes these a lot easier to, not even a lot easier, just it uses less overhead for your database when it's not trying to pull out all of this different information using the local API or REST API. So depth of 0 just brings you the IDs, and the same is true for Payload in general. You want to use the lowest number of depth as possible. So if you don't need a depth of 2, use a depth of 1. If you don't need a depth of 1, use 0. So you don't want to populate more data than you actually need. So make sure you keep your depth low as you possibly can. All right, thumbnail URL hook can populate from thumbnail size. Well, I think that's it. So lots of good changes for Payload CMS here. And so I'm going to go up to my mono repo real quick. And if you look in the description, there is a link to a repo, which is going to be what this repo is being sent to. Upgrade guide updated. Hopefully I did this right. A lot of times I mess up my mono repo and then I have to fix it, but all right. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I will be chopping up this video to make it a little bit more succinct. Oops. So yeah, I'll be chopping up this video to make it a little bit more succinct, which means that I'm going to use these next couple of minutes to just close out what the video is going to be. But I'm going to still be here. I'm going to hang out for another 10 minutes or so before I call it quits. So I might mess around with a few things, maybe look into convex, whatever I can do in about 10 minutes. And we'll all make sure that the repo is done. But first, I will close out. It's going to sound like I'm ending the stream. It's going to sound like I'm ending the video. I am not. I'm just ending what will be the recorded version of this video. So bear with me 1 second. And that's it for And that's it for upgrading Payload CMS from version 3.65 all the way to version 3.72. Hopefully you found this video useful, and if you did, please like this video and subscribe to my channel to find more content about Payload, Next.js, and more modern web dev. I do have a Discord that you can find in the description of this video. I also have a newsletter called Next in Dev, which covers these changes from week to week, so you don't have to wait for me to do an upgrade guide again. So be sure to check out that by going to my website, nlvcodes.com, where you can find more information about what I do, my tutorials, my GitHub repos, as well as ways that you can become a member of my channel or by Patreon. So I look forward to seeing you in the next video. All right, that's all I got, guys. Thank you. Nice work. I appreciate it. Thanks for being here. Yeah, it was at the very beginning of this video that I added, like, I just went straight up to version 3.72. Normally I go version by version. It just wasn't really worth the time to do that. So on that, we have a couple people watching here. I'm wondering what topics do you guys want to see on my live streams? So I've got a list. So I've got convex from earlier, so I'll be looking into convex. The import export plugins on the list, e-commerce is on the list. I'm going to revisit the MCP plugin. I want to do, it's going to be a series of live streams, but I want to do a live stream of getting a website or some kind of application. I don't really know what I want to do yet from start to finish. That's a lot of work though, so I wouldn't just do that all in one stream. So across maybe like 3 or 4 streams, get a project up and running until it's deployed. So showing from like creating the Payload project all the way to the end. I'm making a course, so I can stop recording. Hold on. I'm creating my course, so that's going to be the bulk of my effort right now is getting that done and ready. I'm in the styling phase now of the course, so excited to get that out there. But then I've got Directus. I want to try that out and compare it, because I mean, I recommend Payload for everything, but I want to know what other competitors are. I tried Strappy. I have a video about that. It crashed my computer while I was streaming. But I want to try Directus, the nested docs. There's been a couple of new resources for OAuth added to like shared in the Discord, so I've been trying to look at that and get that on the list as well. There's Cloudflare. I want to get Cloudflare's D1 adapter, and I want to get a project deployed to Cloudflare. Honestly, for that one, I just don't want to pay money. So right now I know that Payload can only be deployed on the paid version of Cloudflare. Job queues and yeah, that's good. I do have one on job queues that's really just scheduling though. It's like just scheduling posts. That's a good one. I need to look into more N8N stuff as well. But yeah, so for the job queues, I have one that I created where it's a job that queries HubSpot every 24 hours and pulls like client logos and stuff. So that one is that's a pretty good idea. I think I could do something that's similar to that, but without giving out like credentials and stuff. Dev setups. Raspberry Pi. Can you tell me more about what you mean by my dev setups? I'm interested in what you're thinking there. But job queues and automation for sure, because there's so much you can do. I haven't even gotten into workflows and I've done jobs, I've done tasks. I've not done workflows. So that's big. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get my hands on a Raspberry Pi right now. So that is an interesting thing, but I don't know how I can do that. But for dev setup, are you talking about like my desktop, like what I have set up here, like what my gear is for like streaming? I mean, I just use a MacBook Pro. It's pretty beefy with the RAM though. But other options, or not options, but things on my list. I want to do Payload with Vue, Payload with Next. I want to get a little unhinged and use it with Flask. So just using the SDK across the board, really branching out beyond Next.js, because Next is popular. I like Next. I like using Next. Like, I can confidently say that I like to use Next. I don't feel locked in. I think it makes sense. It helped make React make sense to me. But I know not everybody uses Next or likes it. So I want to be able to go beyond there. Postgres, I've not done a whole lot with. I did a video on Postgres. It performed really well, so I'm thinking about actually getting in and showing how to use Postgres in both a development and a production environment. So I've got a ton of stuff. So much stuff that I can choose from, but I'm seeing some other good examples here. Let me add automation, N8N, workflows, more on job queues. Yeah, because especially with this new like exclusive and supersedes features with jobs, I need to get back into it. What else we got? Yeah, I wonder if I can. I'm gonna Raspberry Pi. Okay, I still see some. I am interested a bit in N8N because I think it's something that I'm going to be potentially working with in the near future. So I think that might be something that I need to get up to speed with. I do know that it's primarily TypeScript, so it's not anything that I'm too concerned about. But yeah, I'm curious of what you have in mind there. But yeah, so Raspberry Pi, they do have them, so that is something that I might be able to do. I'm not super big into self-host, if I'm honest. I do like it being cheap, and so I am a very cheap person, very frugal. More than cheap, I'm frugal. So, but I do value my time. So that's my challenge with self-hosting. It's something that I know I can do. I've done it. I've done videos on it. But at the same time, it's just so much effort to do. Like, that's why these platform as a service platforms exist, is so I don't have to worry about that. And infrastructure as a service, like, I don't want to have to worry about security. I just want to build stuff, you know? So I want to be able to build websites and applications. I want to be able to do videos and stuff like that. So spending a ton of time learning to self-host and manage and update and keep secure, like, that stuff just doesn't interest me a whole lot. I know it interests other people, so it's something that I am going to still think about and address. But really, like, just spin up Railway. Like, it's not that expensive. I know it's expensive for other currencies. So, like, I understand self-hosting, I do. But for me, it's hard to justify the expense of my time and my effort when it's not something that I'm terribly passionate about. I hope that makes sense and doesn't sound as insensitive as I thought I would, or as I think it was. All right. Got another minute or so just to chat and hang out. And then I think I need to get something to eat. Okay, I'm clicking a bunch of buttons that I don't know what I'm doing right now. Okay. So I think we're at a good stopping point. I do want to thank you all for hanging out, for making coding enjoyable. So I get to hang out with, even if just a couple of people, and learn how to work on code, to share Payload, which I love, to work on some next.js projects, and even to come up with some suggestions of things that I can work on as well. So I added a few of these to the list. So if you're not in my Discord, join the Discord. I'm really bad at Discord. Oh, yes, go to sleep. Yeah, so I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching.